Red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light, green light, red light.
Well, as they say, welcome to the Soul Sessions, folks. I'm your host, Soul. Grab yourself a pint, pull up a chair. But with me today, well, not only is she the Attitude Pro Wrestling Scottish Women's Champion, she's also the basic bitch slayer herself. Rubi Roberts, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. That was quite an introduction. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm very well, Rubi. But I mean, look, I'm a man that dressed to impress. I'm going to give the best introductions that I can. It is my style. I like to think I have that kind of accolade. But nonetheless, obviously, yourself, Rubi, as I do with every guest has a story. Every story has a beginning. How did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
So, as a wrestling fan, I grew up in one of the best times to be a wrestling fan ever. I grew up during the Attitude Era, and I was that little tomboy watching wrestling with my brothers and my cousins, and getting into trouble constantly for doing exactly what they tell you not to do, which is recreating what we saw on the screen. It sort of started out that way. I used to be obsessed with like Stone Cold, Triple H, China, and it's one of those things where my love of it grew. The more I watched it, the more I realized I was like, oh, I want to do this one day. I'd love to do that one day.
It brings in that fascination of just that connectivity with wrestling. So you obviously mentioned the Attitude Era. Everybody goes on about the Attitude Era. I love this. I love that. Some say it's the best time to be a wrestling fan. Some say now is the best time to be a wrestling fan. But with the Attitude Era, obviously, I think what makes it so potent and a remembrance for fans is obviously how it went against the norm culture of the time, which was obviously the 90s. The grunge era, the music represents that. Do you think that kind of era can ever be capitalized on again, against the system sort of thing, the grunge era? Do you think in modern culture, do you think maybe wrestling could ever get back to that counterproductive against society?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at wrestling and the things that are happening in wrestling, they're a direct sort of result of what is going on in the world at the time. And like it got to a point where, like, at the moment, I think we're having a renaissance of the sort of, for lack of a better term, the attitude of the Attitude Era. There's obviously a lot going on in the world, and we're seeing a sort of slide back to getting away with a bit more, being a bit more cheeky, being a bit more gritty, and being a bit more in your face and anti-establishment, just like really focusing in on what the fans are wanting at the moment. And I think that right now we are seeing a bit of a renaissance of that, but with the added bonus of we've come a long way since sort of the late 90s and the early 2000s. Especially like in wrestling, there's a lot more women's wrestlers. There's a lot more women's wrestling. Thankfully, there is a lot less brand panty matches, things like that. So I very much feel that we are seeing a sort of resurgence of that attitude, but in a better way, in a more inclusive way, and in a way where we can all stand together and be like, am I allowed to swear on this?
No, yes, absolutely. It's a Scottish show, of course.
Cool. Just checking. Where we can all just be like, fuck the system, like, let's go and let's all have a great time doing it and get a bit of escapism from reality. And I think that just now we are definitely seeing that.
Absolutely. And I think especially with women's wrestling, you see it as well. We've seen, Toni Storm and Mariah May in Wembley Stadium this year. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan are continuously against one another. We've seen Raquel come back in a new bodyguard characteristic, as well as somebody like Camille. Obviously, last night we had Athena and Billy Stark's main event Ring of Honor final battle in the Hammerstein. We've seen this era, especially with this year of women's wrestling, a lot of standout performances. For yourself, Rubi, with the big wrestling companies, is there any particular names that stand out for you that have had maybe a stellar year?
Oh, there's so many. So I'm really invested, like, for obvious reasons, I'm very invested in the Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan storyline. It's been really interesting to see how they've included sort of like injury and all these things and elements to stall what's going on and keep it going for as long as possible. But it's also been the level of performance those two women are putting in is insane. Like, Rhea Ripley's unlike anything we've ever seen before, barring The Undertaker. Like, she is phenomenal. And she's like a proper force to be reckoned with. Seeing the sort of peaks and valleys of that story, like over the sort of last year, has been really entertaining for me because, I mean, I'm going to be completely honest, my wee inner goth from way back when, wee inner Ruby from when I was younger is going, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to tell you. See, this is what I wanted to see. And it's been really good, obviously, as I said, with the injuries and stuff, to see how they've worked that into what they're doing and how it's built the aggression and the passion in what they're doing. I was actually last night watching the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. I was loving so we obviously mentioned the main event with Athena and Billy Starks. There was the other women's match, which was, my brain has just
Red Velvet versus Flavor House.
Yes, that last night was one of the better matches for me. I'm not gonna lie, like I really enjoyed it. There was just such a good story to it. There was such aggression that you don't always necessarily see, especially in like a smaller wrestler. Like, my God, that lassie. Is it bad I want her to beat me up? But I'm also like, I really want to go at us like wrestling, but like, aye.
Well, some people pay for that service, and you know that's what happens this day and age. But you mentioned obviously Rhea Ripley, because really for her, she kind of really got her start in the UK with a little brand called NXT UK back in the day, and that was really her first proper introduction to the WWE universe. Obviously, there was the Mae Young Classic, but NXT UK gave her the inaugural championship, allowed her to evolve herself. But if you were kind of to take that past Rhea to modern Rhea Ripley, they're completely two different characters. Like blonde hair, less eyeliner, less, studs and all that, and like true gothic attire. Does it really show that one change of appearance can reinvent a whole character?
So yes and no, because I think it's slightly more complicated than just the look change. If you really look at the way Rhea carries herself before and then during and then after this sort of transformation, it's like you can see that she's comfortable in what she's doing. This is really her. This is the Rhea Ripley that she's wanted to have out the whole time. It's just we all take time to get where we're going. I think we just got to see, because she was obviously quite young as well when she was signed, I think we all got to see that happening in real time. So it's not so much that I think the attire change is the thing that's made the difference. I think she's really got comfortable in herself, and this is her really showing who she is. And that's why it's working so well, because she's so comfortable in it, because it's just her. It's just her showing us who she is.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. And obviously, from NXT UK, going to NXT and main roster, and now her and Liv are scheduled to face off on Netflix, the debut for WWE Raw. Obviously, the WWE itself here for us in the UK. But I want to know, Ruby, do you think Rhea's going to win this, or do you think they're going to drag the story out until Mania? What do you think?
So I'd had a couple of... do you know that way your mind kind of starts going down all the different routes? I think that it is time Rhea got it back, because obviously she was injured. It wasn't really that she ever lost the title, and I think that this has gone on to a point now where I'm like, there has to be some kind of payoff now for all of this exposition, all of this build up, all of these staring matches and very quasi horny moments they're having. But I think there needs to be like a sort of crescendo to that, and I think it is going to be that event. I think they'd be nuts not to have it change hands on the very first Netflix sort of show.
Yeah, fair dues.
But I've been wrong before.
Well, that's the thing about wrestling, is a never say never. 1 minute it could be a good slug, and then EQ, and it's like, oh well, we're doing this all over again. That's the joy of it. I do want your thoughts though, because a lot of people have vocalized for a particular match for Rhea, and I think they should do it because it would be absolutely entertaining as fuck. Rhea Ripley versus Dominic Mysterio.
Yes. The entire time this storyline has been going on, I have been saying that it has to end with Rhea just not in a squash way or any sort of manner, but finally getting her hands on Dom and be like, this is all your fault. This was you. You're now going to pay. Like, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see how he tries to squirm out of it or get out of it, or if they suspend him above the ring in a bigger cage. I don't know. Whatever it is, I want to see it.
I don't know, Ruby. I think it should be, Dom's tied up in a chair and Rhea Ripley just stamps on like chicken nuggets just to really drive it home. Make the boy suffer. That's going to get to his attitude. Or shave his mustache. I think that's two ways to
shave his head. Yeah, full like, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Degradation. Just take the hair off. You're not allowed it anymore. You've lost the rights to it.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to lie. The promo the other day where she just hit out with chicken tender slut was just that I was pissing myself laughing for about 10 minutes. I had to pause it and was just absolutely ending myself for about 10 minutes because I just wasn't expecting it.
They have a way with words. It's the fascinating thing of it. But obviously, Ruby, I mentioned obviously Raw coming to Netflix, and they are coming here to the UK, especially Glasgow, for their WrestleMania tour. I've seen the ticket prices. You bastard. Oh.
Yeah, if I manage to sell one of my kidneys, I might end up going.
I mean, you've got two. You can,
exactly. The other one will cope.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Don't you want to see, I don't know, Final Testament versus the Wyatt Six or something like that? We can get something. I mean,
exactly.
Just your thoughts on the ticket price. Obviously, Clash of the Castle Scotland was here at the Hydro, and they were quite bad. But obviously, it was a combo deal with SmackDown. Some people were very lenient. But this is, 300 mid-range in the Hydro for a 3-hour show of Raw. Maybe a main event taping added on extra. Yeah. Do you think maybe WWE's bit taking the piss?
Yeah. So obviously, I wouldn't maybe put it in those exact words, but what I would say is I think that the ticket prices for an event like that, and I understand that obviously there are many staff that work on these shows. There are reasons that sometimes the ticket prices are high. But I do feel that for your mid-range seating where you're not even really getting a good view of what's happening and you're going to have to watch most of it on the monitor at the top anyway, it does seem high, especially when, and I'm probably just going to be a bit selfish and plug here, like there is so much talent in the UK who are putting shows on every weekend or every other weekend for 10, 15, 20 pounds a ticket that are people who could end up on these shows one day, or people who are doing things that you would never even see on a WWE show. And I just think that it's mental that there's such a massive gap between what the sort of indie scene here is providing and offering ticket wise versus when the sort of biggest company in the world doing it come in and they're like, okay, well, we're just going to break these in for one day and have like these really high ticket prices, really high merch sales and all this. And I understand they have to make their money, they have to cover their costs, but it does seem somewhat high, which is why I would always encourage people to try and, I'm not saying don't go to these things, I would never say don't go to them, but try and invest in the local wrestling scene a bit more to try and bridge the gap a bit. And then also maybe potentially in the future, if there's more investment in sort of the local scene and smaller shows rather than just the big ones, it maybe bridge that gap a bit more and maybe have sort of create space within those two to have high quality wrestling that we're getting to see and people can afford, and they're still getting to see like bigger names and see the same things without it absolutely breaking the bank or people having to take loans out at Christmas to do it.
Exactly, absolutely, Ruby. And I know as well, obviously, during All In Weekend, there's places like Rag Cabaret, Progress, Hustle, and North putting on shows as well as Progress. But then, obviously, a bit more close to home for us, during Clash of the Castle weekend, CPW, ICW, Valor, Free WL, and Bleeding Gums put on that crossover show, which, you were there as well. You were a part of that show as well. Yeah. Oh, it's been so long. I've been drinking too much and I'm forgetting things. That's not good for an I mean, I do want to obviously discuss about Clash Castle weekend and that whole vibe of, because the Scottish wrestling indie scene in Glasgow was kind of on fire with so much things going on. Just your thoughts on that whole real weekend.
It was it was a really interesting atmosphere. Even so, there was obviously companies where advertising outside of the event. There was also shows going on round about the event, and being part of that, there was like a really exciting energy. I don't know how to explain exactly. It was like a buzz. It was like an electric buzz where everybody was focused on what they were doing and getting people in to enjoy wrestling and work sort of together to try and put as much focus on what's happening just now and the talent that we do have, while sort of riding that wave of what's going on with WWE at the time. So obviously them being here creates a huge amount of buzz in itself. To then sort of be able to go out, speak to fans who you maybe necessarily wouldn't have had a chance to meet because they don't go to indie shows, get to speak to parents, kids, and just enjoy the love of actual wrestling with all of them, as well as getting to enjoy working together to put these shows on and do the best job that we can for the people that come in. It was just this really good kind of, like I said, electric feeling buzz where everybody was just really charged to do their best and just enjoy wrestling and have fun. Which I think sometimes people forget with all the serious things that are going on in the world and that do happen. I think sometimes people forget this is a really hard thing to do. So why would you not do it if it wasn't fun?
No, absolutely. I mean, I've heard things from previous guests of the shows of taking time off work or missing family events to make dates and get their names out there, build their social media profile through many things that they've had to do, whether it's a podcast like myself or other platforms, just to get that showcase. Mm-hmm. And that weekend especially, it was just like, don't get me wrong, I liked Clash the Castle. I got to flip up CM Punk while he's walking up the ramp costing Drew. Fuck that prick. But just to work the 3WL, the Valor and Bleeding Gum show was probably my highlight of that weekend because it was fun. It was a fun environment, and we all had a good time. It was a good show that was put on. There was a lot of fans that enjoyed that, and that's just the real fun part about it. But obviously, we're speaking about the Scottish indie scene. Of course, as I say, Ruby, everyone's a fan, but you'd be a fan that would take the extra step further to get in the squared circle itself. The journey of that, because I believe it started just before the pandemic, if I'm correct.
So yes and no. I had a bit of a bumpy start into wrestling. I tried to get into wrestling training when I was much younger, around about, I want to say 2011-ish. I tried to go to Source Wrestling School, but unfortunately, I actually had a work-based injury that dislocated my shoulder and caused damage and put me out for years. So it wasn't until 2018 that I even sort of looked at coming back to it. My cousin, Bobby Roberts, had started his own wrestling school at the time, which was new to the area that I lived in. And slight sort of detour in the story. At the time, I was much heavier. I used to be 8 stone heavier, and I used to have a walking stick because of one of my chronic conditions. And I had tried literally everything, like Zumba, MetaFit, all these trendy exercise things. Just none of them were for me. They were either too boring or far too intense with no kind of introduction to it or Mm-hmm. And my cousin has sort of basically pitched it to me as, you love wrestling, you really wanted to do wrestling. Why don't you use it to rehabilitate yourself and try and get some of your mobility back? So I thought about it and I was like, do you know what? I have literally tried everything else. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to get a bit more hurt. And what? So, it was a sort of slow process, but I started off doing 1 class a week. And eventually, about a year and a half later, I was doing up to 6 classes a week with extra bits and pieces, and started actually being able to debut and start doing shows right as everything shut down. But that was sort of the very abridged short version. I tried it when I was younger. I had to stop. I then got very sort of ill, and then literally wrestling kind of saved my life.
I mean, the way I've seen you in the ring now, I would never have thought somebody would use a walking stick in the past. I mean, Fucking hell, that's amazing, Ruby. Honestly, that's
Thank
crazy.
you.
Jesus, wow.
I actually recently got to break that walking stick. Actually, I say recently, God, that was nearly a year ago now. That was in January. I asked if I could use the stick in a hardcore match in Sweden, as like a sort of cathartic moment of I'm finally like breaking the thing that I needed when I was broken, and got to wrap it right round Zero. Do you know Zero?
Aware, yes.
Yes, got to wrap my walking stick around that man's back and explode it.
Well, I mean, the NHS ain't going to use it, so I mean, there's better ways of sending it out in glory.
Exactly.
It's a
I was
good wrap.
slightly upset they wouldn't let me take the remnants of it home, but apparently it could be seen as a weapon on a plane, so I had to bin it. But I tried.
Well, you got to give it a good send off by breaking Zero's, back. It's a way to go. It's a way to go.
Yeah.
But obviously, I know you would take a break also because of the global shutdown. A lot of things were shut down. I want to know your views on the product. Obviously, like WWE were running, AEW were still running, TNA as well, and obviously I know ICW did some stuff here in Scotland as well. Just your views on the product during that global shutdown time.
So I really enjoyed the product, but it really, which I'll explain properly in a wee second, but I really feel like that period of time really showed you how important the audience is to what we do. Like, I've always been told it doesn't matter if you're doing your thing in front of one person or 1,000 people. You always go out there and you put on the same performance regardless. But when you actually see a wrestling match in a room with no people, it really shows you how much energy it sort of provides the atmosphere of what's happening and how much we can feed off of that as well. Like you could go out there and have a set idea in your head of how things are going to go, and that crowd could just not react the way that you thought they were going to at all, and you have to be like, do you know what? Cool, let's go with that then, and totally just go with it. And I think it really highlighted how much we really feed off of the energy of the crowd as almost the other person in the ring. But I think that the way that they went around doing it, and I think that the way that they really tried to sort of build up the cinematic aspect of what they were doing and really sort of take on the Matt Hardy way of doing things, I think that they did the best with what they had, and I think in some aspects some of it really, really worked, and then I think in other aspects some of it maybe didn't. But it was a completely new situation. We'd never had anything like that before, so I think they were very quick to respond to it. And I think they, in general, like sort of all the companies that were doing it at the time, I think they all tried to be as safe as they possibly could doing it, while also providing as much entertainment as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. A troubling time for a lot of people, and a lot of people needing that sense of escapism. And no matter whether they're fans there or not, or it was just, talent getting to be around the ring, there was an escapism with wrestling at that point. Whether it was, say AEW or WWE or TNA, there was that escapism. But there was a lot of great stuff that happened during that Thunderdome shutdown Daily's Place era. I think of Hurt Business. I think of what Bray Wyatt was doing with The Fiend and Randy Orton, Dark Order with Brody Lee during Daily's Place era. Is there anything from that time period from any company that you wish got the fans opportunity to be there and see it and give it a reaction?
For some reason, my brain is just repeatedly going the Buried Alive match. But I do that way. I'm actually trying to remember who was involved in that match. It just keeps going Buried Alive match, Buried Alive match.
Was that the one with Taker, AJ Styles, and the OC?
Yes. I know that realistically that was filmed in a way that there's no way you could have done that inside an arena, and there's no way you could have done it in a way that the audience could have been there to see it. But it was one of those moments during all where I was like, see this is the absolute ridiculous break from reality that I need right now. That and Rey Mysterio losing an eye and growing it back. That's to this day and probably forevermore. See that one single thing. It's the only time because there's obviously a certain element of suspended disbelief in what we do, and we work very hard to keep reality rooted in it, but we're also good guys and bad guys and look like we should be in a superhero movie. So, but that one thing, it's the only thing where I'm like, you took out his eye? You threw him off a building and you took out his eye? And then he's like, what? Like, just there's so many things. Like, you might as well just set him on fire.
Stem cells. We'll just say it's stem cells.
Well, yes, everybody does seem to be getting into the stem cells these days. But I think those were the two things I think that as a fan, I wish I could have been there to sit there and be like, I want to see it. I want to see that. I want that exactly over and over again.
It would have probably been like The Fiend and Seth Rollins Hell in a Cell, where everybody loses their collective shit and it's like, refunds, please. We're not happy with this. We're not paid for this. But that's the joys of the Thunderdome era. Obviously, coming back to Scotland, obviously there's many independent companies. You know, stuff like Pro 2, W3L, Valor, Attitude Pro Wrestling, Community Pro Wrestling. And I know you've appeared in a few of those, but I'd love to know your journey of just basically exploring the Scottish wrestling scene itself.
Yeah, so my thing's always been I want to try and work for as many different companies as I can, and I want to try and experience as much as I can in wrestling, because we obviously don't know how far we're ever going to get with this. We can just keep pushing and seeing where it goes. So I've not worked for every company in Scotland yet, but I am working my way through them. I'm also trying to get into other countries a bit more this year. I am going to try and broaden my horizons, and then also maybe try some new things next year that I will be teasing in January.
Oh, Ray, I'm an interviewer. It's my job. You've just given me a tease. I need more. I need more. Like even a filter. Like this is a colander. You have to filter in some stuff. What we got? So,
basically, I have been. So like the first couple of years of your career, you're sort of getting established, you're getting used to things. Like I was saying with Rhea Ripley earlier, I think the thing with her is that she's really shown us who she is now. She's comfortable in what she's doing and the confidence is ripping out of her and we're all like on board with it. I'm starting to sort of find myself a bit more in wrestling and realise the sort of things that I really like and the things that I really resonate with. And I think that some new shenanigans will unfold next year and potentially possibly debuting another character.
Shenanigans. Good Lord, the shenanigans. Come on, this is the festive period. We cannot be teasing shenanigans. This is absolutely outrageous. Oh,
get everybody excited for the new year.
Screw the advent calendar, screw the turkey. Shenanigans is what we'll be having for the Christmas roast. That's what I'll be having. Now, some companies obviously I want to give a particular spotlight to. Obviously, first of all is CPW and APW. Obviously, CPW owned by Ruby Davey, APW Attitude Pro Wrestling owned by the Wanderer. These are companies that have really focused on younger talent that's really been brought up through their systems, the like of obviously Caven Cross, Termination Z, Nicole Jasmine, the Pack as well. Yeah. All these very young, fresh up names. For yourself, Ruby, I know you've appeared in both these companies, and as well, we've mentioned there's the Attitude Pro Wrestling Scottish Champion. Just your thoughts on what CPW and APW provide to Scottish wrestling.
So, I feel with both companies, they're such a positive company in general, both of them. To work for from like the working point of view, it's always such a great atmosphere. There's such a good like creative environment. Both Mikey from APW and Ravy from CPW go out of their way to make sure that everybody's having a really good time, but also that it's not like, oh, it's just us, our friends having a good time. Everybody's having a good time. Everybody's included, and it's all marketed sort of at that younger demographic as well. And I think for them to be able to see a bit of themselves in the people that they're paying to see, and to see that anything's possible if you really want to do it, it's such an important thing right now. Especially a lot of the areas where these shows are being held, I mean, they're not high income areas. They're not areas that have got a lot of amenities or other shows that are coming through. So a lot of the time, it's providing something for those kids that they maybe wouldn't have access to otherwise. And it sounds silly to some people, but see that one kid that their dad's paid a tenner for that ticket, and it's the only thing that he can afford to get him, but he's done it for him because his kid loves wrestling. And then that child goes and he sees all these sort of slightly older trainees who are young, if that makes sense, doing what he loves and what he wants to do. If that one kid goes home going, I could do that one day, then that is all the positivity that I think you need. But imagine that on a wider scale, and for especially in these sort of more deprived areas, giving kids like that hope and entertainment and wonder and all of these things, it's like immeasurable. It's, you couldn't even put a monetary cost on it. That's something that I think is so important. It's why we need wrestling in the indie scene in general, not just those two companies.
You know, 100% there, agree. And I know Rubi Roberts has done something very special as well. I know he won a reward for, I believe, the Glasgow Council as well. So it shows that he has that impact. And you know, I've been to one CPW show, which was cease and desist, obviously, at that Scottish Clash of Castle weekend. And fun environment is the best way to describe it. The community there is essentially a community of people that have that interactions, and you get some crazy names that appear there. Like I know Michael Oku and just appears there sometimes. I'm like, oh, holy shit, Evan Ronan King, take that, please. I will happily get front row for that. But obviously, APW, we've mentioned you are the active Scottish Pro Wrestling Women's Champion. You dethroned, I believe it was
Nicole Jasmine.
Nicole Jasmine. It was. I want to know, obviously, because that's your first title, if it, as I'm correct.
Second. So, but the first one, there is a bit of a story attached. But it's my second title. I'm also the second person to hold it. Nicole was the first ever APW Women's Champion, which I have to commend her for. But at the moment, I am the current and hopefully long-standing APW Women's Champion. It was end of October. I'm trying to think if it was like 27th of October. Fatal 4-way, myself, Lana Austin, Celine from France, and Nicole Jasmine. And whoever got the pin got the belt. And fortunately enough for me, I was the one left standing at the end.
Congratulations on that, because, you know, see, Ruby, I have to bring something to your attention, because I have a quote here I need to read from you, because somebody else appeared on this show. That episode's not gone live yet at the time of recording. It's a little person called Alfiee, managed by DeeDee. Because I know you two will be heading together for the next Active Pro Wrestling show next year. And she said something on this show. So I'm going to read this little quote. Thankfully, my eyes are still working, so I don't need the spectacles like Triple H. But she's unaware of what we are. We are unusual. We are uncertain. We are a surprise. Myself and DeeDee are going to be truly an uncertain opponent, and we will happily take that title away from Miss Little Roberts. Your thoughts on what Alfiee and the immaculate Build-A-Bear DeeDee have said on that?
So, I mean, I feel like that statement could go both ways. Hell, I'm not even going to try to be nice. I'm Scottish and I'm scheming as hell, hen. Bring it on. Like, I have strange weirdness coming out my hair follicles at this point. I mean, for God's sake, I walk about with blue hair. I'm a massive goth, and I'm into everything from EDM techno to Dolly Parton to the Bloody Shark song. So come at me, bro. Bring the weird. Let's go.
All I'm saying is, we don't mess with the Build-A-Bear. I've seen people mess with the Build-A-Bear, and it's not gone in the best direction. So I'm just saying, leave the bear.
I can't promise anything, right? I can't promise anything. I recently beat up a plushy peacock at SWE, so I can't say I've not even got a track record, because I do. We'll just see what happens.
Oh, I'll start saying the thoughts and prayers for the Build-A-Bear, because
I'll get a sewing kit. It'll be fine.
The sewing kit. the sewing kit. That will be the medical expertise for the Build-A-Bear. But obviously with APW as well, they have quite a good bit of advertising, because I know they appear on the Cam Glen radio show as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's quite fascinating as well. Just your thoughts on, because that's not really something we see here in the UK. Like, I don't see some companies going on radio shows all the time or using that as a platform. Some people say video killed the radio star, but I mean, radio's still an acceptable platform for advertising. Just your thoughts on appearing on a radio show.
I loved appearing on a radio show. It was a really interesting experience, and the guys who run the show are so on board for any ideas or anything we throw at them. They're like, yeah, let's find a way to make that work. And I think it's such a good tool for advertisement. Like you said, people say radio's dead, but sorry. Every time you go into a garage, a bookies, a shop, like, it's the radio that's on. It's not dead by any means, and I think that it's a really good way for us, if we can utilize it more in general across the board, to maybe get to people that aren't necessarily wrestling fans but might go, oh, I know wee Jimmy who likes wrestling, or oh, my grandson likes that, I'll just get tickets to that and take him along. And then you've got the chance to sort of convert somebody who maybe wouldn't have been a wrestling fan in the first place. And it's with us going so far into, so much of wrestling is moving online, and it's moving towards being social media famous and getting followers and all of these things. I think that it's still important to remember that there are people in Scotland especially that don't exist in that space. They don't have Facebook, or they don't have social media in general, or access to these things, or they maybe just don't use them. And I think radio is such a useful tool for us, especially in an industry where it used to all be word of mouth. I think that it's important for us to try and get back to that a bit as well, and really utilize that tool at our disposal. I mean, it's right there.
Hey, if it's a tool that can be used, it might not have the reach, but it's still a tool that some people will get. You might get some people from that, and it's an effective tool at the end of the day, and you got to use it. I mean, how many people love Boogie in the Morning or Fourth One and all that? Like that.
Exactly.
It's an avenue for advertising, no matter how old, or like, newspaper's still a fucking thing. Like,
exactly. And like, wrestling still gets heavily featured in local newspapers, papers, especially in Scotland. But I think that radio is something that we could definitely utilize more of. I mean, podcasts are essentially an evolution of that in itself. So I don't know why we don't advertise these things more, unless it's just a cost thing. But
right, you can see all my cost goes into a suit, so that's where the cost. So this is where that budget goes.
Money.
Exactly. Fuck wearing a CM Punk shirt that's like 20 years old with stains on it. Like, I'm not like.
Exactly.
Dress for the part, folks. All I'm saying is, but like, if that gets me some DMs, fuck it, I'll put it on private. Obvious. Well, another promotion obviously is Valor. Valor does a lot of great things, and I've been to most of their shows at the Grand Old Opry. Lovely venue. Obviously, just your thoughts. I know you've faced quite a few opponents in Valor's time. Also, I know Daisy Jenkins is one that you faced quite a fair few for Valor. Just your thoughts on your time, obviously, with Valor and facing somebody like Daisy Jenkins. I know even Casey said is like the future of women's wrestling in Scotland.
Yeah, Daisy is a ball of pure energy. Like, she is so focused, and it's been a pleasure to wrestle her, because we've had quite a few matches at this point, and it's gone pretty much almost down the middle both ways. But she is such, like, I genuinely don't know what else to say other than, like, she is such a good positive light, and such a hard worker, that I think there is no way she's not going to end up being part of the future of Scottish wrestling. I'm going to be slightly big-headed and say that I hope I would one day do the same thing, but there is no denying that Daisy is one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life, bar myself.
Hey, you've both appeared on this show. I think this is a catalyst for good things. I won't say so myself, but I'm just saying.
Fingers crossed.
Hey. But obviously, with wrestling, we've mentioned, the younger audience they're passionate about it and they love to enjoy it. And so as well as some older fans. But then you do get that bunch of wrestling fans that are, best way to describe it, fucking weirdos.
Yeah.
Yeah. From hypersexualizations or critique of people's work or saying they could do better, but then when you throw them a booking pen and saying you have to do this and this, they just brains explode and don't know what the fuck they're doing half the time.
Yeah.
I know you've had some particular encounters with fans in the past, and I had Annabelle, who's worked for the Night Families promotion down south, but they actually had a class on fan etiquette and how to keep yourself safe and identifying possible triggers of not really good behavior and how to act upon that. If you feel comfortable, Ruby, obviously sharing your experiences and how you've walked away and just felt like I'm like treating that situation as, of course, was a bad thing, but knowing how to avoid it in the future.
Yeah. So I always try to sort of go into any situation. It's going to sound bad, or not bad, but like, I don't want it to sound like I'm being sort of alarmist or extremist, but see, generally as a woman, even if you're not a wrestler, you need to be aware of what's going on around you and the behavior that is going on around you in case you need to identify it and be like, right, no, I need to get out of this situation. Within wrestling, unfortunately, for every like 10 amazing, supportive, good-natured fans that you get, there's always like one guy in the back who hates all women's wrestling but at the same time will drool over them all and then just voice all of his opinions pure loudly and then try to get grabby. Do you know that way? And it's that one guy lets all of those other 10 down because all these other 10 people have been amazing. The particular incident that you're referring to was I was making an entrance at a show, and a fan who I had spoken to on several times, like other shows, spoken to them several times before, had never had any issue with them before this point. I couldn't hear what they were saying, so I've leant down slightly to hear what they're saying, and the fan has then grabbed me in a headlock, pulled me in, got a grab of my chest, and wouldn't let go, which is not ideal in any context. I've tried to, there's a way that I try to deal with these situations where if I do not feel like I am in immediate severe danger, I will try and handle it with as much grace as I can while getting safely out the situation. Because just because someone's chosen to act like that doesn't mean I need to stoop myself down to the same level to deal with it. But on this particular occasion, I could not get this person off of me because of the way they had grabbed a hold of me. I eventually ended up basically having to elbow them off of me. And then I've immediately went off, finished my entrance, and then alerted security immediately. And thankfully, it was at Valor Wrestling. It was handled immediately. They were spoken to. They're not allowed back. And it was all handled very seriously. And like, as I said, immediately. It's just very disappointing when, like I said, you've got all of these fans that come along to have a good time and just enjoy the show and be part of it. But it's the ones who come in with that sort of attitude of, oh, well, I've paid a ticket, therefore I can grab at them or I can touch them or I can say what I want to them. No. We're still human beings. And I'm not just talking about the female wrestlers. I mean, wrestlers in general. We are still human beings. We still have thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And what you say and do has real world consequences, even if we're playing a character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at the end of the day, I'm still a person under here. I'm still a mum, a sister, a cousin. Like, I'm a friend to people. I'm still a human being. So it's something that we all need to sort of stand up and call out when we see it. And thankfully, the culture that we have now, that's happening more and more, where people are standing up, no matter who it's happening to, and being like, no, right, you need to leave. You're the problem. Get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's,
absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, no, you're 100% right there. The modern climate of wrestling is very happy to call out people on shithead behavior. I know you grew up with fucking brand panty matches, but that's not the times anymore. Things have evolved.
Exactly.
We're a much more acceptable environment. You know, anyone and anyone can come to these shows, no matter whatever you live your life or whatever way, and enjoy the show. Even if if you want to consume alcohol, that's fine. It's not a fucking crutch to say that. Oh, well, I've had a few drinks, I can act like a dick. Nah, you fucking can't. I mean, the horror stories I hear from women wrestlers, especially. I mean, that's why so many of them I see have their social medias private or DMs blocked and not to be messaged, because you do get fucking weirdos messaging you all the time. I mean, you've probably experienced that as well, Ruby, right?
Oh yes. I fondly remember that there was a Fierce Female show just before everything shut down that was named "We Want to Bookings You," because all of the female talent at the time in Scotland were getting messages from this one guy who was pretending to be a promoter and was saying, "We want to bookings you." So it then got turned into the title of an all-female show.
What the fuck?
Yeah. It happens all the time. I've had people pretending to be promoters. I've had people pretending to be wrestlers and trying to fight me. I've had some just horrendously creepy messages that I won't really go into. People asking if I'll pick them up. Like, just straight up, like, could you lift me? I mean, I probably could. Why would I lift you up? Why would I touch you? I've never met you.
Maybe they can't reach the top shelf to get their meal out of the fridge. I don't know. Fucking what the fuck?
Yeah, like, I don't know. But, and the thing is, I'm like a very, very approachable person. Even, like, don't get me wrong, when I'm angry, probably not. But in general, I'm like quite an approachable person, and I'm very open-minded. But do you know that way there's a line where you're just like, right, no. Take a wee step back. Would you say that to your granny? Like, if you wouldn't say it to your granny, don't say it to me.
I fucking hate weirdos. Fucking hell. What the fuck? God. Fucking.
It's one of the unfortunate realities of the situation that we're all in just now. But I will say, at least on some occasions, if nothing else, it can provide a very, very good laugh.
Absolutely. It's a fun drinking story. I mean, I'm sure that's the fun element of it as well. But hey, nonetheless, obviously with Scottish wrestling, there's so many things going on just now. And obviously, company I work for and you've worked for as well as obviously Bleeding Gums.
Yes.
You were also quite sorry because you were the first woman to have a singles match in Bleeding Gums as well against the doctor himself, Mr. Leo Darwin.
Yes. That was interesting.
Darwin's well, he's an interesting character. He how's the way to say this? Peculiar. He has his elements. He has his showmanship. I mean, because you had quite a busy day that well. Because I remember discussing with you, like you've been traveling a lot getting to that show as well, right?
Yeah, so I had two different shows on the same day that were about an hour's drive away from each other. But the way it worked out, my partner was also on one of those shows, but not the other. And I'm the only driver. So it was one of those ones where I'd had to drive up to Dundee and then back down to, was it Fife?
Yeah. No,
and then back.
Kirkcaldy.
But yeah, so like up to Dundee and then drop them off, get back down, help with everything there, do the thing, wrestle the match, and then without changing, still kick pads and everything on, jumped in my car with the people that I had to take with me. I mean, I finished wrestling, wiped the sweat off and jumped straight in the car, straight back to the next show, to then get there 3 minutes before I was due to go out and be like, right, cool, let's go.
Oh, fucking
and
hell.
then come back later on to take down the ring for Bleeding Gums that night. But yeah.
Jesus Christ. Hard worker, Ruby. Hard worker indeed, because that's a hell of a fucking day.
I love it. Like, honestly, do you know that way? I've always been in the opinion, I can sleep when I'm dead. Like, I'm going to enjoy the living hell out of the time I've got just now. So why not cram as much into that time as I can?
Hey, it's like a famous Scottish film once said, choose life.
Exactly. And it's shite being Scottish.
I'm pretty sure that film was actually just a fucking documentary at this point before I've seen in Edinburgh.
Pretty much.
Yeah, good times. Obvious well, Bleeding Gums. I know you and Daisy facing there in the first women's on women's match as well at Liquid Filth, the 1 year anniversary. Obviously, Bleeding Gums has now announced their Life Will Kill You tour in 2025. I know you've not really done death matches. That might not be your forte, and that's what Bleeding Gums offers, is the chance to do death matches or not. If you are able to come back to Bleeding Gums in 2025, is there any particular match types or opponents you would like to face within that Bleeding Gums environment?
So, opponents-wise, everyone. I just want to wrestle everyone. I know it sounds a bit like a cop-out answer, but I mean, I really do want it, because the thing is, you never know what somebody's going to come out with. You never know what somebody's going to do, but you also, like, you never know what you're going to learn from wrestling someone. Like, even if you lose or even if you win, you're still going to learn something. And the best way to learn as much as I can is to wrestle as many different people as I can. So, like, full roster, Big fucking Joe, Mon. Lou Nixon, Mon. Sugar. Sorry, ADHD moment. The name got to the front of my brain and then just went. But yeah, like, I would love to try out as many different wrestling styles as possible, as many different people as possible. I will say, I don't tend to do deathmatch wrestling, mostly because, see, just for myself, again, it's a personal thing. See, because I'm a parent, like, I have a son. In fairness, he's nearly 18 now, but I always felt that if I made that choice and something went horrifically wrong, I would never be able to forgive myself if I left myself in a position where I was not able to be there for him anymore.
Of course.
So, and I know that sounds quite like gloom and doom serious, but just, I am a single parent, like, I'm his only parent. So for me, that is just my choice. I do hardcore matches on occasion. Like, I did the first women's hardcore match in Denmark, which was a lot of fun with Lexi Lux for formerly CPW, but now Valor Wrestling. So it's not off the table. I'm not opposed to hitting people with things or being hit with things. I just draw the line at needles, glass, and razor wire.
Yeah. I've worked a few of the Bleeding Gums shows -1, and every time I see all that shit, I'm like, I'll take 2 steps back. This is a free piece. I am not getting blood on this shit.
Yeah. That is the other thing. Like, blood does stain. It's part of the reason I made my gear red, is you can't stain red more red.
It's just what Will Ospreay says. Get Sillet Bang and the dirt is gone. Or maybe
there you
flooded.
go. Sorted.
Sorted indeed. It's truly fascinating, I think, this year, especially what our scene has achieved. You look at Discovery Wrestling, they went over to Germany, Joe Hendry leading that charge. Valor put on multiple shows. CPW and Attitude Pro Wrestling have brought in that community kid environment for the younger audience. Bleeding Gums for the 18 plus. ICW, even in their own way, have put on shows that have stellared a lot of the older stars, from Jack Jester, Krieger, even doing opportunities. For yourself, Ruby, if you had to pick a particular word, one word in general, what word would you associate in the year of 2024 for Scottish wrestling?
Oh, that's a really good question. Like, the first word that popped into my head does not describe the future of it at all. It was just diversity. I feel like Scotland in particular is coming up on itself again, if that makes sense. Like, there was a wee while ago, just before NXT kind of swept the scene, where it was such a, like, an amazing scene, and it was like, at its peak, it was amazing. And I think after obviously COVID and everything else, the Scottish scene's starting to claw its way back up again to where it was and getting back up to that peak, but with even more diversity and just wealth of talent that we didn't have before because they just weren't trained yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I feel like after everything that's happened for the last few years, Scotland's big thing is going to be growth. I think we're going to be growing back to that peak point where it was like no one could deny that we were one of the best scenes in the world. And we're getting back to that. So yeah, I don't know, growth, diversity.
I think they're very two good words. You know, I've had August Artois, who's somebody who wrestles in Florida. He's the FIP world champion. And he's came over and done 3 UK tours this year because he just loves the environment. He loves what he can gain the knowledge. And he speaks of how wrestlers back in Florida want to come here for an opportunity. You know, I've even had former NWA junior heavyweight champion Joe Alonzo Jr. He wants to come to the UK and get that opportunity. One of Cody Rhodes' students, Brooke Havoc, wants to come over and get that opportunity. We provide such a fascinating field of wrestling because you could go to a extreme hardcore show one, then to a family show at a Butlins. I mean, Bryan Danielson was singing the praise of Butlins at the All In press conference. I mean, Butlins getting a shout. Fucking hell, I didn't think that would happen, but crazier things have happened. Do you think with the UK wrestling scene in general, it's one of the best places for international talent to learn the craft?
I would say so, yeah. I think that the legacy of training schools and the sort of culture that we've got around teaching wrestling in the UK, it's one of the best places to go and get like a good all-round wrestling education. There's a bit of everything. Like, it's not fully rooted in the Memphis style, and it's not fully rooted in just British. It's not fully rooted in Japanese hard style, but there's like an element of all of it. I feel like because we're kind of in the middle of them all, and because of the scene that we have had in the past, that it's one of the best places to go and get like a proper all-round wrestle anywhere in the world education. And also to wrestle some of the best talent in the world who might not be on the biggest stages right now, but some of the best talent in the world lives in Scotland.
No, 100% indeed, absolutely. There's absolutely fascinating names across our scene. Now, of course, as well in 2025, I know another company is going to form a centerfold to CPW, which is the Hardcore Wrestling of Glasgow. That'll be a 18+ promotion, separate from CPW, but featuring CPW and APW stars in death matches, hardcore matches. It's not been fully specified, but it seems to be more catered to an older audience. I want to know from yourself, Ruby, if you can name some names to feature in a death match that have appeared on the CPW and APW roster, which 4 names would you like to see featured in a death match at the Hardcore Wrestling of Glasgow?
So, first thought, just because I think Hardcore Cowboy is amazing, would be JB Dub, who was the JB Dub Hardcore champion for CPW for a wee while. He's got his own wee belt. I would love to see him doing something like that. The Pack as well. That's the faction, the Pack. I'd like to see how they operate as a pack in a more adult setting, if that makes sense. Because obviously with companies like CPW, APW, W3L, it is more geared towards a younger audience. And obviously with the older shows, this is you taking the folk that still love wrestling, even without all of the kind of like boo, yay, boo, kind of thing at the beginning. You're taking the people that still want to see that, but they also want a bit of sort of more mature content and a bit of gore and a bit of grit to it. So I would love to see how the Pack operate in that environment rather than a family-friendly one. I'd like to see if they get right rank nasty like evil or how they would go about it. And then, do you know what? I'd love to see the 2 owners, Mikey and Davey. I'd love to see them have a hardcore match together, because I also know that the 2 of them are like, do you know that way they're both really intelligent guys and they're both good at what they do, but I would love to see what happens when all the rules are taken away. It's like, just go for it.
See, I seen that Sam Barber and Davey Davey ladder match at Cease and Desist, and that was fucking something. I think gloves are off and suits are off, and it's going to be barbaric. It's one way to describe that. Obviously, 2025, there's a lot of big companies coming over, but one show in particular, AEW and New Japan Forbidden Door. Now, you know, Forbidden Door, it's the fun element, crossover shows, crossover people. That's very interesting. But what I want to propose to you, Ruby, obviously, we've seen Nigel McGuinness. He turned it all in. Had a match at Grand Slam. Had a match at Ring of Honor Final Battle last night.
Yep.
Nigel McGuinness can appear on that card. What Forbidden Door match would you give him from somebody from New Japan?
I'm trying to think of like different answers, but I just keep coming back to I'd love to see him in Okada. Like, I think that would be fucking excellent, to be honest with you. And I would, yeah. Like, watching last night, watching that Pure Rules match, so many times I've heard people say nobody cares about a Pure Rules match, or people just think that's boring, people don't like that. That was one of the most entertaining back and forth matches I've seen in a while. And it was a Pure Rules match. There was no excessive mad flips or any of the things that Will Ospreay does. It was mostly actual pure wrestling and just storytelling, and it was amazing. And I would love to see someone like him in with Okada and just see the wreckage that happens. I don't know if you're sensing a theme here, kind of like dropping a bomb and seeing what happens. Like, just like, haha. And then
so you just dropped you dropped the bath bomb and all the little petals come out. It's like, yay! Reaction.
Yay! I'm the little gremlin in the back going, yay.
Well, AW is for the sickos, so I guess that's the fun part of it. That's what we love. Obviously, you mentioned the Pure title there. And outside of Ring of Honor, I can't really think of another company that does it that way. Do you think there could be a Pure title within the Scottish scene?
I would love it if there was a Pure title within the Scottish scene. I do not get me wrong, I claim to be no expert, but I really love sort of like old school British wrestling and like pure hold for hold type stuff. It's always had like a wee place in my heart, and I would love if we could find a way to get people into that again, like try and make it a bit more of, because it's a huge part of where wrestling as we know it today came from, and I think that it's up to us to keep that alive within our own wrestling culture in the UK. Don't get me wrong, plenty of people do, but I think that there's definitely room and space for something like a Pure Rules championship or a Pure Rules tournament that we could do in Scotland or the UK in general.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you get on the phone with a couple of people. I mean, I'm sure we can try and get a belt made. I mean, we can try. We can try. GoFundMe exists. That will be something we can try. That will something
Definitely. We'll get a plan together.
Man with a plan. That's what I like to hear. Rubi Roberts, been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the Soul Sessions. But before we go, two final questions. One I have to bring up. Something I've seen and I'm very confused by, and I'm wondering what the fuck's going on with this. The seventh circle. This appears to be going on in Attitude Pro Wrestling.
So
a couple of individuals in masks, they're going around, they've harassed you, they've harassed other people. Right, what's going on?
I will say they have not harassed me so much as they were there to back me up in a time when I needed it. But I don't know who they are. I've noticed that they've been tagging me on social media. They made a video that had me in it. But I don't know who's behind those masks. And to be honest, I mean, somebody's offering to help me. I'm not going to say no. Like, don't get me wrong. There are some exceptions to that. Like, okay, fair dues, he's not alive. But if like Osama bin Laden offered me a hand, I'd probably be like, that's probably a bad idea. But I have no idea who these people are, and I still have that weird rubber mask they gave me. I don't really know what to do with it. I'm debating just hanging it up in the background of promos, just for shits and gigs, because I just have this mask that I don't really know what to do with. But I want to know what they're about. Like, I want to know why they helped. Like, do you know that? Why did they pass that belt in? Like, why did they help me? Why me? And should I be concerned about it, or should I just be like, cool, thanks, and move on with things? But I think time will tell. From what I've heard, nobody really knows who it is. But I kind of want to find out. Like, I don't know if I want to maybe just start doing a Ruby Investigates and see if I can find out who they all are, because I'm a nosy bitch.
Oh, well, I'm an interviewer. I'll get me detective hat on. I'll be doing the investigating. I will put up the collage of pictures and names, and I'll get ring string around this place, and it's going to look like an absolute nutter's house. But
So I was just going to say, I'll get you some red string.
the red string. Everybody loves the red.
Red.
It adds on that authentic investigation profile. But I mean, I'm going to keep my eyes on these things. I don't know what the fuck's going on with these fellas or whatever. Whoever they are is very questionable. But of course, Ruby, the final question I obviously have to ask is, you've mentioned your love for Rhea Ripley, and I want to know, say in the future, WrestleMania in the UK, fuck it, why not? You get to face Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship, but I want you to pick two things. One, what would be your dream entrance music for that? And two, what match type?
Oh, so entrance tune. This is one I struggle with a lot because I have ADHD and I think I have about 25 different favorite songs. But I think if I was going to pick one off the top of my head, it would probably be Freak Flag by Ice Nine Kills.
Ooh.
So Ice Nine Kills, I don't know if you are familiar with them. Ice Nine Kills are a band that they've sort of shifted. They used to be like a scene band. They now exclusively write about horror characters. And that's me over the back. I've loved horror films since a lot younger than I should have been allowed to watch horror films. But I would love that one particular because my thing's always been that I want to try and inspire the other freaks out there, that you can do whatever the hell you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do. As long as you put your mind to it, you can find some way. Like, don't get me wrong, things will get thrown in your way, but there's always a way to find a way, like, round it. There's always a way to get to where you want to go. You just have to really, really want it and really try for it. So that's the song. And I would probably, given what we were just saying there, I'd want a best 2 out of 3 falls. Like, full on best out of 2, like best 2 out of 3 falls, limited amount of rope breaks, like no, like you get counted on the top rope, full on, we have to out-tech and batter each other.
Oh, that's going to be something. I'm sure Meltzer will be throwing out the 5 stars like that. He loves that kind of stuff. Oh, maybe that'll be an absolute slayer of a match. I'm sure it'll happen in the future because I'd be happy to pay the fucking ticket prices for that. Fuck the balance. Fuck the balance. I would pay for that. Well, Rubi Roberts, the basic bitch slayer, the APW Women's Champion. It's a pleasure to have you here on the Soul Session. And of course, folks, if you love what you've heard of Ruby, I will put a link to her Instagram down below. Click that, follow the journey of the basic bitch slayer and see where she gets up to next. Well, I would say finish up your pints, folks, but I've done that already, so I'll just grab a refresher, put your chairs away, and thank you as always for tuning in for another episode of the Soul Sessions.
Now I'm out there with you, gonna live like